My name is Grace Myers. I'm 28. Last Thursday at 3:47 p.m., I was standing in my mother's kitchen holding a phone I wasn't supposed to have, and she was screaming at me so loudly that her face had turned the color of a bruised plum. "You manipulative little bitch," she said, spit flying from her lips. "You think you can just waltz into my house and demand to see her? She doesn't want to see you, Grace. She told me herself." I was shaking so hard the phone rattled against my ear. On the other end, hospice nurse Maggie was still there, waiting, listening. "Mrs. Myers," Maggie said carefully, her voice tinny through the speaker. "Your mother has been asking for Grace every day for 3 weeks. I'm required by—" My mother lunged across the granite island and ripped the phone from my hand. She ended the call with one vicious jab and then hurled my phone against the backsplash. It shattered into 4 pieces. "Get out," she hissed. "Get out of my house before I call the police and tell them you're harassing me." Rick, my stepfather, appeared in the doorway. He'd been listening the whole time. He always was. "Diane," he said softly, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Calm down. The neighbors. Not, she has a point. Not, maybe we should let her visit. Just the neighbors." My mother's eyes were wet, but not from sadness. From rage. "You've always been ungrateful," she said, her voice dropping to something cold and flat. "Your grandmother gave you everything growing up, and you couldn't even bother to visit her once in the last 6 months." That was a lie. I'd tried 11 times. I had the declined calls on my old phone to prove it. Before I go on, if stories about standing up for yourself mean something to you, please hit like and subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now and what time is it there. Let me take you back 16 years to when I was 12, and my grandmother's kitchen smelled like cinnamon rolls and lemon pledge. Grandma Elaine lived in a pale yellow house on Sycamore Lane, with a wraparound porch and wind chimes that sounded like tiny bells. Every Sunday after church, she'd make me hot chocolate with real whipped cream, and we'd sit at her kitchen table with the checkered tablecloth and play Scrabble. She always let me win, but she pretended she didn't. "You're going to do something important one day, little spark," she told me once, brushing flour off my nose. I'd been helping her make pie crust. "You're going to teach children, or build something beautiful, or write something that matters. And when you do, I want you to remember that you didn't need anyone's permission to shine." She wore this specific perfume, White Shoulders, that smelled like gardenias and powder. When she hugged me, I'd close my eyes and breathe it in and feel safer than I'd ever felt at home. My mother hated those Sundays. She'd drop me off with tight lips and pick me up with tighter ones. "Don't let her spoil you," she'd say on the drive home. "She thinks money solves everything." But Grandma Elaine never gave me money. She gave me her time. She gave me her attention. She gave me a space where I wasn't wrong just for existing. The first betrayal happened on a Tuesday in March 2 years ago. I was 26, teaching second grade at Millbrook Elementary, and I came home from work to find my mother sitting on my apartment steps. She had a folder in her lap and mascara streaked down her cheeks. "Grandma's in the hospital," she said. "She had a stroke." My stomach dropped. "What? When? Why didn't you call me?" "I'm calling you now." She stood up, folder clutched to her chest. "But Grace, there's something you need to know. Before she collapsed, she told me something. She told me you'd been asking her for money. Large amounts. Emails, Grace." My mother opened the emails, Grace. My mother opened the folder. Inside were printed pages, screenshots of emails from my address to Grandma Elaine's, asking about estate planning, asking about liquidating assets, asking about early inheritance. The dates went back 8 months. I'd never sent those emails. "This isn't real," I whispered. My face burned so hot I could feel my pulse in my teeth. "Mom, I didn't write these. Someone faked. Don't lie to me." Her voice cracked. She pressed a hand to her mouth, shoulders shaking. "I defended you, Grace. When Rick said you were only nice to her because you wanted her money, I told him he was wrong. But I can't deny proof. Rick. Of course. He'd been pushing my mother to secure her inheritance for years. I'd heard them arguing about it during Christmas. "Let me see Grandma," I said. "Let me talk to her. She'll tell you I didn't." "She doesn't want to see you. She's devastated." My mother closed the folder. "The doctors say she might not recover, and if she doesn't, I need to make sure her estate is handled properly. I'm her power of attorney now." That detail snagged in my brain. Now? She changed it? Last week, before the stroke. My mother's tears had dried. Her eyes were clear. She wanted someone she could trust. I tried calling Grandma Elaine's room 14 times that night. The hospital said she wasn't accepting calls. I tried visiting the next morning. Security turned me away. "Family only," they said. I was her granddaughter. I was family. But my mother had added me to a restricted list. Over the next 2 months, I lost 3 friends. People I'd known since college stopped answering texts. I found out later my mother had shown them the fake emails. "I'm so worried about her," she'd said at book club, voice trembling. "I think she might be on drugs." Why else would she steal from her own grandmother? The rumor grew teeth. Someone at church told someone at the grocery store. Someone at the grocery store told someone at the school. By April, parents were requesting their kids be moved out of my class. Principal Hendricks called me into her office with a pained expression. "Grace, I have to ask, are you going through something? Financial troubles? Because if you need help—" "I'm fine," I said. I wasn't fine. My savings account had $284 in it. I'd spent everything I had on lawyer consultations, trying to prove those emails were forged. The metadata showed they'd been sent from my IP address. Someone had hacked my account or used my computer. But proving it would cost $8,000 I didn't have. Grandma Elaine died on May 3rd at 6:22 a.m. I wasn't there. My mother didn't call me until 11:15 a.m., 5 hours later. "She's gone," she said flatly. "The funeral is Friday. Come if you want, but don't make a scene." I wore my only black dress, the one I'd bought for college graduation 6 years ago. It was too tight in the shoulders now. The funeral was at Oakmont Cemetery, under a sky so gray it looked like wet concrete. 43 people attended. I counted. I stood at the back. When I tried to approach the casket, Rick stepped in front of me. "Maybe give Diane some space," he said quietly. "This is hard for her." Harder than it was for me? I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I stood there like a ghost, watching my mother cry into Rick's shoulder, accepting condolences from people who wouldn't look at me. After the service, my mother's friend Linda cornered me by the parking lot. "You should be ashamed," she whispered. "Your poor grandmother worried herself sick over you." I didn't respond. My throat had closed up. That night, I sat on my apartment floor and ate peanut butter straight from the jar because I couldn't afford groceries. My checking account had $91. Rent was due in 5 days. I'd already picked up 2 tutoring gigs and a weekend babysitting job. But it wasn't enough. I went back to Millbrook Elementary the next Monday. Teaching saved me. My second graders didn't care about rumors. They cared about whether they could use markers or crayons for their horse drawings. They cared about spelling tests and recess, and who got to be line leader. I graded papers at my desk during lunch, ate vending machine crackers for dinner, and told myself I'd survive this. My classroom manager, Mrs. Patel, brought me coffee one morning without asking. "You look tired," she said gently. "You eating enough?" I nodded, lying. She didn't push. But the next day she left a bag of groceries by my car. Inside was a note. "You're a good teacher. Don't forget that." I cried in the parking lot for 10 minutes. My mother called me twice over the summer. Once to tell me Grandma's house was being sold. Once to tell me the estate was complicated and I shouldn't expect anything. "She left you some jewelry," my mother said. "I'll drop it off sometime." She never did. In August, my mother showed up at Millbrook Elementary at 2:30 p.m., right as school let out. Parents were everywhere, picking up kids, chatting by the playground. I was helping a student find her lunchbox when I saw my mother walking across the courtyard in her white linen pantsuit and oversized sunglasses. She looked like she was going to a yacht party, not an elementary school. "Grace," she called out, loud enough that 6 parents turned to look. "We need to talk." My student Emma looked up at me with wide eyes. "Is that your mom?" "Go find your dad, sweetheart," I said softly. Emma ran off. My mother stopped 3 feet away, arms crossed. "You've been calling my lawyer," she said, "harassing him about the estate. I told you there's nothing for you." I kept my voice level. We had an audience. "I asked him one question, Mom. I asked if Grandma left a will, and he told you she did. She left everything to me. The house, the savings, the jewelry, everything." My mother tilted her head. "I know that upsets you, but maybe if you'd been a better granddaughter, things would be different." Mrs. Patel was standing by the classroom door. 2 other teachers had stopped walking. Emma's dad was staring. I felt my face go hot, but something inside me had shifted. I wasn't embarrassed anymore. I was tired. "Okay," I said. My mother blinked. She'd expected me to argue. "Okay? If that's what the will says, then okay." I picked up my bag. "I need to finish work. Have a good day, Mom." I walked past her into the building. My hands were steady. My voice had been calm. And for the first time in months, I felt something harden inside me. Not anger. Clarity. That night, I was cleaning out my closet when I found an old shoebox from high school. Inside were birthday cards, movie ticket stubs, a pressed flower from prom. At the bottom was a small envelope with my name written in Grandma Elaine's looping cursive. I didn't remember putting it there. I opened it. Inside was a single piece of notepaper dated 3 years ago, right after I'd graduated college and gotten my teaching job. "Little Spark, I'm so proud of you. When you read this, remember, I've always been 3 steps ahead. Trust Mr. Novak. He'll know what to do when the time comes. All my love, Grandma Mr. Novak." I didn't know anyone named Novak. I Googled the name plus estate attorney plus our city. One result came up. Samuel Novak, estate planning and trust law, office on Belmont Avenue. I called the next morning. The receptionist answered on the second ring. "Novak and Associates." "Hi," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "My name is Grace Myers. I think my grandmother, Elaine Whitfield, might have worked with Mr. Novak." There was a pause. Then, "Please hold." 30 seconds later, a man's voice came on. Deep, calm, older. "Miss Myers, I've been waiting for your call." My heart stopped. "You have?" "Your grandmother left very specific instructions. Can you come to my office tomorrow at 4 p.m.? I took a sick day from school. I'd never done that before unless I actually had a fever. I drove to Belmont Avenue in my 13-year-old Honda with the check engine light on. Mr. Novak's office was in a brick building with ivy growing up the sides. The lobby smelled like old books and lemon cleaner. Samuel Novak was 67, bald, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He shook my hand and gestured to a leather chair. "Your grandmother was one of my most prepared clients," he said. "She started planning for this meeting 8 years ago." "Planning for what?" He slid a sealed manila envelope across the desk. My name was written on it in Grandma Elaine's handwriting. "She knew your mother would do exactly what she's done. The isolation, the lies, the restricted access. Elaine predicted all of it." My hands trembled as I opened the envelope. Inside was a letter, folded once, and beneath it, a stack of legal documents. I read the letter first. "Dear Grace, my little spark, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, And your mother is already telling people you tried to steal from me. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I wish I could have stopped this while I was alive, but Diane doesn't respond to reason. She only responds to legal documents that she can't argue with. Do you remember that Sunday when you were 12 and you told me you wanted to be a teacher? You said you wanted to help kids feel safe the way I made you feel safe. I cried in the bathroom after you left because I was so proud of you. You've always had the kindest heart. I need you to know. Those emails she showed you were fake. I never received them. I never believed for 1 second that you wanted my money. What I believed was that you wanted my love, and I gave it freely. 3 years ago, I set up an irrevocable trust. The house on Sycamore Lane, the savings account at Riverside Credit Union, $890,000 as of last month, my jewelry collection, appraised at $64,000, and my personal journals are all held in that trust. Your mother does not have access to it. Rick does not have access to it. Only you. I left your mother a will. A real one, legally binding, that gives her $25,000 and my car. That's all. It's enough to keep her from contesting, but not enough to reward her cruelty. Inside this envelope you'll find the original trust documents, notarized, witnessed, filed with the county, bank statements showing the savings transfers from my personal account to the trust account, 8 years of records, affidavits from hospice nurse Maggie and 3 of my church friends, Martha, Susan, and Dorothy, confirming that I asked for you repeatedly and that your mother denied access. A flash drive containing the IP trace report for those fake emails. They came from Rick's laptop, sent while you were teaching at Millbrook on March 8th at 10:14 a.m. Your school attendance log is also included. Mr. Novak has instructions to wait until your mother has filed the will for probate. Once she does that, once she tells the court under oath that there's nothing else, he'll file the trust documents. The reading will be public. She won't see it coming. You are not greedy. You are not manipulative. You are not ungrateful. You are my bright, beautiful granddaughter who chose to spend her life making children feel loved. And I couldn't be more honored to have known you. The house is yours. Live in it or sell it. The money is yours. Use it for whatever brings you peace. The journals are yours. Read them when you're ready. I wrote about you in almost every entry for 28 years. All my love. Always and always, your grandma. P.S. I hid your favorite teacup, the one with the violets, in the attic. It's wrapped in my blue shawl. I know you thought I'd donated it. I read it 3 times, then 4. My hands were shaking so badly the paper rattled. Mr. Novak sat quietly, letting me process. She knew, I whispered. She knew exactly what would happen. Your grandmother was a very intelligent woman, and she loved you fiercely. He gestured to the documents. Your mother filed the will for probate 2 weeks ago. The reading is scheduled for October 18th at 2 p.m. in this office. She's required to attend. The court requires all named beneficiaries to be present. I'm not named in her will. No, but you're named in the trust, and the trust supersedes the will. He smiled, just slightly. Your mother doesn't know that yet. October 18th was 11 days away. I spent those days in a fog. I taught my second graders, graded spelling tests, organized the classroom library. At night, I read Grandma's letter over and over. I examined the documents. The IP trace report was devastating. Rick had sent those emails from his laptop at 10:14 a.m. on March 8th. I pulled up my school records. I'd been teaching a parent observation day that morning. 22 kids, 15 parents, security footage, sign-in logs. I'd never left the classroom. The affidavit from Nurse Maggie was 3 pages long. She'd documented every time my mother had refused my calls, every time Grandma had asked for me, every time my mother had said I was too busy or didn't care. Martha, Susan, and Dorothy, Grandma's church friends, had written statements confirming they'd tried to contact me about Grandma's decline, but my mother had told them I'd moved away and didn't want to be involved. All lies. all documented, all under oath. On October 18th at 1:45 p.m., I walked into Mr. Novak's office wearing my best dress, navy blue, bought specifically for this, and my grandmother's pearl earrings, the ones my mother said she'd lost. The conference room had a long mahogany table and 32 chairs. 31 of them were filled. My mother sat at the head of the table in a black dress and diamond studs. Rick sat beside her, hand on her knee. Around them, my Aunt Carol, Uncle Jim, cousins I hadn't seen in years, Grandma's neighbors, her church friends, her book club. Everyone was there. My mother's eyes landed on me and narrowed. "What are you doing here?" Mr. Novak stood at the front of the room. "Miss Myers is required to attend. Please, everyone, take your seats." I sat at the opposite end of the table. 31 pairs of eyes watched me. My mother whispered something to Rick. He shook his head. Mr. Novak cleared his throat. "We're here for the reading of Elaine Whitfield's last will and testament, filed for probate on September 30th. I'll read the document in full, and then we'll address any questions." The will was short. Grandma left $25,000 and her 2015 Toyota Camry to my mother. She left $5,000 each to Martha, Susan, and Dorothy. She left her china set to Aunt Carol. Everything else, the will stated, had been distributed according to prior arrangements. My mother's face went white. "What prior arrangements?" Mr. Novak set down the will and picked up a different document. "Mrs. Myers, were you aware that your mother established an irrevocable trust in 2018? Silence. No. She never mentioned. The trust was filed with the county clerk's office and is a matter of public record. It holds the majority of your mother's estate, including her home, her savings, and her personal effects." He looked at me. "The trust names Grace Myers as the sole beneficiary." The room erupted. Cousin Jennifer gasped. Aunt Carol grabbed Uncle Jim's arm. Martha started crying. My mother stood so fast her chair tipped backward. "That's impossible," she said, voice shaking. "I'm her daughter. I was her power of attorney. I handled everything. You were granted power of attorney in March of this year, 6 years after the trust was established. Power of attorney does not supersede a trust." Mr. Novak's voice was calm, clinical. Ms. Whitfield was very clear in her intentions. My mother turned to me, and her face was a mask of pure fury. "You manipulated her. You turned her against me. You—" "Mrs. Myers," Mr. Novak interrupted, "I have here a series of documents I'd like to enter into the record. First, affidavits from 3 witnesses confirming that Ms. Whitfield repeatedly requested to see Grace during her final months and that you denied access." He slid the papers across the table. My mother didn't touch them. "Second, an IP trace report showing that emails allegedly sent by Grace to her grandmother, emails you presented as evidence of manipulation, were in fact sent from a laptop registered to your husband, Richard Myers, on March 8th at 10:14 a.m. He slid another document. Grace was teaching a parent observation day at Millbrook Elementary during that time. 22 children and 15 parents can confirm she never left the classroom. Rick's face drained of color. He stared at the table. Third, Mr. Novak continued, a signed statement from Ms. Whitfield, dated January 14th, 2018, in which she explicitly states, "I am of sound mind and body. I am creating this trust to ensure my granddaughter Grace is protected from my daughter Diane's financial desperation and her husband's manipulations. I do not believe Grace would ever harm me. I believe Diane will try to isolate me from Grace after I'm gone. This trust is my insurance." He read the last sentence again, slowly. "This trust is my insurance." My mother's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Aunt Carol spoke up, voice small. "Diane, you told me Grace was stealing from Elaine." "She was, I thought—" "You lied," Martha said from across the table. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were wet. "We tried to call Grace. We tried to tell her Elaine was asking for her. You told us she didn't care. My mother turned in a circle, looking for an ally. She turned all of you against me. No, Susan said quietly. You did that yourself. I sat very still. I hadn't said a word. I didn't need to. The documents spoke. Grandma's voice, preserved in legal language and witness statements, spoke. Mr. Novak looked at me. Miss Myers, would you like to say anything? I stood. My legs felt shaky, but my voice was clear. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because my grandmother wanted me to have the truth. These documents are her words, not mine. I didn't turn her against anyone. I didn't manipulate her. I loved her and she knew that. I looked at my mother. I'm sorry you didn't believe it. Then I walked out. Behind me I heard my mother say, If you think I won't fight this. Mr. Novak's response was calm. You're welcome to try. The trust is irrevocable and fully legal. Any contest will be expensive and unsuccessful. I made it to my car before I started shaking. I sat in the driver's seat with the engine off and cried for 20 minutes straight. Not sad crying, relief crying, the kind that comes when you've been holding your breath for 2 years and finally get to exhale. 3 weeks later, my mother sent me an email. No subject line, just, I hope you're happy. I deleted it without responding. Over the next 6 months, things unfolded slowly. My mother and Rick separated in December. Apparently, the fake emails were the final straw. Aunt Carol and Uncle Jim stopped speaking to her. The church friends, Martha, Susan, Dorothy, invited me to lunch and cried through the whole meal, apologizing for not doing more. We tried, Martha said. We called the hospital. We called you. But Diane was so convincing. It's okay, I said, and I meant it. I moved into Grandma's house in January, the pale yellow house on Sycamore Lane with the wraparound porch and wind chimes. I found the teacup with violets in the attic, exactly where she said it'd be, wrapped in her blue shawl. It smelled like White Shoulder's perfume and made me cry all over again. I kept teaching at Millbrook. I loved my job, and the kids loved me. But now, I could afford to buy classroom supplies without worrying about rent. I could take my students on field trips. I could tutor for free. I set up a scholarship fund in Grandma Elaine's name for education majors. $25,000 a year. It felt right. 1 year later, I was sitting on Grandma's porch on a Sunday afternoon, drinking hot chocolate with real whipped cream and reading her journals. She'd written about me almost every week. About my first day of kindergarten, my college acceptance letter, the time I called her crying because I'd failed a math test. December 3rd, 2015. Grace told me today she wants to be a teacher. Not for the money, not for the summers off, but because she wants kids to feel safe. My heart could burst. She's going to change lives. I closed the journal and looked out at the yard. The wind chimes sounded like tiny bells. If you're watching this and you've ever been told you're too much or not enough, if you've ever been called greedy for wanting what was rightfully yours, if you've ever had to prove your worth to people who should have loved you without conditions, I want you to know something. Silence isn't peace. Silence is just the space where someone else's lies get to grow. My grandmother didn't stay silent. She planned, she documented, she protected me the only way she could. And when I finally stopped waiting for my mother to believe me and started trusting the people who already did, everything changed. You don't owe anyone access to your life if all they do is destroy it. You don't owe anyone forgiveness if they're not sorry. And you don't need anyone's permission to walk away from people who make you feel small. I'm sitting on my grandmother's porch, the one she left me, the one my mother said I'd never deserve. There's snow falling, soft and quiet, and I'm warm. I have a cup of hot chocolate. I have her journals. I have a life I built with my own hands and her love as the foundation. That's enough. If you've ever had to choose between keeping the peace and keeping your dignity, type "I chose me" in the comments. Or if you're still fighting for your voice to be heard, type "I'm still fighting." Both are brave. Both matter. If this story meant something to you, check the description for more stories just like this one. Thank you for being here. I hope wherever you are, You're warm and you're safe.